Hey guys, this is Joe748 and I'm here with SD1. SD1, how you doing?
No, I'm here with Joe748. It's a pleasure, Joe.
Oh, here we go. And we have a special guest with us today. Brian Hatch struggled with gambling addiction for 14 years before finding recovery and is now a prominent gambling addiction advocate, speaker, and host of All In, the Addicted Gamblers podcast. The podcast features the lived experience community, affected loved ones, clinicians, academics, and many more. Thanks for joining us, Brian.
Thanks, guys, for having me. I appreciate it. It's nice that you're willing to have me on. I think it's a nice thing you're doing, so I appreciate it.
I think it's really important because we were trying to come up with things to talk about on this podcast, and I feel like gambling addiction is always in our community, in our circle, it's kind of spoken about as like the people that we see at the casino while we're working, or this gambler was doing this behavior, but it's never talked about as like, oh, it's actually a thing that you could potentially slip into if you're going into card counting with kind of the wrong intentions. Or we've even seen, professional advantage players, card counters who were really disciplined, did everything correctly, but for some reason or another shifted and started gambling and not professionally investing through card counting. So we just wanted to get into this topic and kind of do what we do all the time, which is talk about it openly, talk about it with a bunch of different experts, and just try to get the message out there. So thank you.
Sounds great, man.
Can you take us back to the beginning? What first led you into gambling, and when did you realize that this could be a problem?
I share my story a lot, and I used to always start, when I was 18, I went to the casino and played Blackjack. But upon looking back further, my grandfather showed me how to play poker when I was 5, and so we'd play and he'd make me pay at the end, which happened all the time because he was my grandfather and I was 5. And so, he won. Then when I was 12, my church had a festival. They were selling pull tabs, those mechanical scratch-off tickets. And for some reason, I could at 12 buy them. I used all my money and bought them. Lost. And then I went to my parents' car and I cleaned out all the change in their car. And so I stole their money to gamble at 12. 16, I lost money to my friend in ping pong. We just kept doing double or nothing because I kept losing. And I was like, double or nothing, double or nothing. And so the signs were there. And we had all, we would play blackjack and poker and take turns being the house, which does not work well at all with a group of friends. But then it was primarily at 18. I was a freshman in college. And bunch of friends from high school were going in Michigan, where I grew up. You could go to the casino at 18. So we were all going to meet up and play blackjack, and never done that before. It sounded awesome. So we played in a casino, and I won that night. And that was the thing that got me, is I won that night. I won like $150 playing blackjack. And that just clicked. And so the casino, it was a 5-hour round trip from my dorm room. And I started going 2-3 times a week, gambling all night long till 6 a.m, going straight to work the next day, smelling like cigarettes in the casino and everything. And so that's how it started. And it got me kicked out of college my freshman year because I didn't go to class. I just gambled at the casino all night long.
Yeah. Was there a kind of a turning point where
several
you kind of,
it happened a lot. At 24, a few things happened. I worked for my uncle. We did manufacturing, like soldering wires and stuff like that. And I was late constantly. And I was late because I was at the casino all night long. And my boss went to my uncle and said, I need to fire your nephew. And my uncle said, yeah, fire him. So I got fired. So I went to my grandfather, the one who showed me how to play poker. And I said, I need you to please co-sign a loan so I can go back to community college. I'm going to go back to community college. So a $4,000 loan, because my parents weren't going to co-sign it at that point because they had found out about my gambling. And he did. He co-signed the loan. Check came in the mail. I called him and I said, hey, thank you. I got the check. And he said, why don't you send the check back? And instead of paying the interest on that loan, I'll just give you the $4,000. You can pay me back interest free. I thought that's a great idea. He sent me another check. I never sent back the other check. And I lost the $8,000 in 2 nights at MGM in Detroit. And then on top of it, leaving the second night, I had a massive panic attack because of what I had done and the realization of what I just done. And leaving the casino, I called my mom and I was like, I can't breathe right. Something's wrong. And she said, go to the hospital, dummy. So I went to the hospital and they're like, you're having a panic attack. You're okay. And here's a bill for $2,000 because you came without insurance. So it was very expensive 2 nights. It's funny though, I started playing blackjack at 18, and that's what I was playing all night long, all the time. And then when I turned 19, you could gamble in Canada at 19. So I started going to Canada because it was much closer. And in Canada is where I stopped playing blackjack all the time because I'm sure you guys have seen these two guys sitting on either side of me. This guy took this guy's card, wasn't supposed to. They started getting into it at the table, and I backed away. I was like, this isn't why I'm here for this sort of anxiety inducing moment. So I kind of moved over to roulette then. My downfall was, as I'm sure many people's are, you sit at a slot machine once and you play and you win, and then you think, oh, I can do that again. And so that I got into that dirty, slot machine gambling is just stupid on any level, but that's what I got addicted to most. But I played everything in the casino. And then the other thing that got me to go to a Gamblers Anonymous meeting was I had a friend, Chris, from high school, and he and I were roommates several times in our 20s. And he was one of those gamblers like most who take their $40, win or lose, they're done. It's just some entertainment. So he came with me one night, and I didn't like to gamble with people because I didn't want people to see how I gambled because it was disgusting. And he gambled his $40, but Chris liked to drink. So he got drunk. I didn't drink a lot when I was gambling because I honestly didn't want to get up to go to the bathroom. That's how addicted I was. And yeah, it's silly. I lost my $1,000. He lost his $40. And at the end of the night, he was hammered enough where I said, hey, give me your ATM card and your code, and I'll win our money back, as if he cared about his $40. And I don't know if it's because he was a good friend or if he didn't care or if it's because he was drunk, but he gave it to me, and I cleaned out his bank account and I lost it all in the next 20 minutes. Walking out of the casino that night, he said, you have a problem, man. You need to get help. And that was the first time somebody else said it to me. Like before that, I knew I was addicted at 18, but trying to win my way out of it. Like, I'll be okay if I win, but it never came. So I went to my first GA meeting at 24. It didn't work, but I went.
Well, was that what was driving you? You think when you were in it was just like, it has to turn around eventually. Was that the fuel?
My mindset was that the universe isn't going to let me go hungry, right? Like everybody's sitting on those machines or at those tables going, God's not going to let me lose. But God doesn't care whether you win or lose.
Yeah.
And so my mindset was like, well, it's got to work out at some point. I'm coming here all the time. And I won from time to time. I'd hit jackpots or I'd win at roulette or blackjack or something. But it was like you said, SD1, it was just ammunition for more gambling. It was like they hand you this stack of cash and you're like, great, I can gamble longer. Not great, I can go buy a TV and pay bills and pay rent. That's what got me.
And it's not like, oh, you hit a huge jackpot and you're like, okay, that was my one jackpot. It's very, very unlikely I'm going to hit another one but I'm just going to stop now and never look back. Right?
No, I hit one and I was like, I can do that again.
Right.
It was just like this miracle that just happened is going to happen again.
Never walk away from a heater.
Yeah, right.
And all those, all the bits from like Rounders were in my head, or, Rider till she bucks you. All that stuff was going through my head. Like, it's got to hit. It's got to hit. And it doesn't got to hit.
Yeah. Gambler fallacies.
Yeah, exactly. Red, 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 red. Well, it's got to be black.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you make the side comment that God doesn't care. That's because luck is not real in a casino. It's just all math. And you can every now and again have some positive, what we call mathematical variance in your favor, even though the edge is against you. But ultimately, God's language is math, and the math always wins.
Yes, it does. I learned the hard way.
Before you started to get help on your own, what was your family saying to you? Did they give you any suggestions, or were they just kind of like, you need to stop, you need to stop?
I went to my parents to tell them I had a gambling addiction, not because I wanted help mentally, but because I needed help financially. I went to them strictly because I needed them to pay some debts that I had accumulated. And they said, well, you need to get help. And I didn't get help. I didn't listen. So the first time I told my parents, they both cried. I cried because it was just like, this is why I'm not progressing in life. I was in my early to mid 20s and they're like, what's going on with our son? My friends were graduated, got real jobs, careers, getting married, having kids, buying houses, and I'm moving back in with my parents for the third time in my 20s. It was a very depressing time. And the problem was I kept thinking like, I'm going to win my way out of this. I've got to. But it never came. And I think back to working all those, I didn't graduate from college because of the gambling. And I think back about all the hourly jobs I was working, and I was like, those would have been fine if I had just not wasted all the money. I'd have had a fine life. But wasted all the money. Nothing to show for it.
What role do you think that the casinos played in feeding that addiction?
In 14 years of gambling, and that was all in casinos, never online. It was in casinos in Michigan, in casinos in Illinois, in casinos in Las Vegas, Arizona. And in those 14 years, one time, someone at the casino said, "Hey, man, do you want to take a break?" One time. And it was because I had gone to the window for the third time getting a credit card advance. And the very nice lady was like, "Are you sure? Don't you want to go home?" So I think a large portion of the revenue in casinos comes from a small amount of gamblers. And it's those gamblers like me who are there till 5 a.m, lifting our feet for the vacuum to vacuum under, not getting up so the vacuum can vacuum. That's always the one I go to.
That's also us, by the way.
Yeah, true.
The very, very, very small amount.
Well, that's
not many people get that reference, but you're like, when they come and vacuum, you just lift your feet and they go under.
Yeah, it is interesting how when I hear you talk, you saying certain things that us as professional gamblers I can relate to, but I know in my head I don't have a problem, but I kind of want to get into like, how do you know you have, what are kind of the markers that you actually do have a problem?
Well, I would imagine the difference between you guys and myself is discipline. I am a big believer that people know if they have an addiction. If you have to ask somebody if you have an addiction, you probably have an addiction. I knew I was addicted because I wasn't going to class, because I was going to the casino till 6 a.m. all night long, driving 5 hours round trip. It was pretty clear that I was addicted. Was it harmful yet? I was 18, so I chalked a lot of it up to, well, I'm too young to have an addiction. My view on addiction was like needles in arms, and that's what I knew about addiction. I didn't realize gambling, a behavioral addiction, could be an addiction. So once I realized that, I mean, I knew 3 months in I was addicted. I called the helpline in Michigan when I was 18, and I said, "Hey, instead of saying I need help, I said, I'm writing a paper about gambling addiction. Can you send me information?" And they sent me info, and in that information were the 20 questions that if you go to a Gamblers Anonymous meeting, they'll ask you at your first meeting. And usually if you answer yes to 7 or more of those questions, you probably have a gambling addiction. And at the time I had answered yes to 15 or 16. So I was like, oh, I have an addiction to gambling. But I just kept thinking I'm going to win. And I just kept thinking, well, I'm too young. I don't want to stop doing this thing that I love doing.
When you were playing in the casino and you looked around at other gamblers around you, did you feel like, oh, I'm not like them, or I'm separate from them? Or were you like, oh no, these are my people. I see you, you see me, like it?
When I was sitting at the blackjack tables, I just thought it was a fun party because everyone's having a good time and high-fiving, and it felt very friendly. But honestly, as time moved on, I avoided people at all costs. I didn't talk to people in casinos. I didn't want to talk to people. I knew I shouldn't be there, so I was trying to basically hide. So I didn't really pay attention to other people. I would notice if I'd seen somebody, 8 hours earlier and then saw him 8 hours later, and I'm like, oh, that's that guy again. But I just wasn't aware of people. Now, if I go to a casino to see a show or something and I walk through the floor, I look around, I go, oh, that person's addicted, that person. Like, you just see the signs that I used to portray. And so now I can kind of pick it out, but you honestly just never know. You don't know why anybody's there or how long they've been there. So it's hard. But I think the individual knows in their head if they're addicted.
I just looked up the 20 questions, and Joe, I don't know if you did the same thing, but I would 100% answer more than 7 of these in the affirmative, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah. Do you mind reading off the questions?
Yeah, not at all. Did you ever lose time from work or school due to gambling? Has gambling ever made your home life unhappy? Did gambling affect your reputation? Have you ever felt remorse after gambling? Did you ever gamble to get money with which to pay debts or otherwise solve financial difficulties? Did gambling cause a decrease in your ambition or efficiency? After losing, did you feel you must return as soon as possible to win back your losses? After a win, did you have a strong urge to return and win more? Did you often gamble until your last dollar was gone? Did you ever borrow to finance your gambling? Have you ever sold anything to finance gambling? Were you reluctant to use gambling money for normal expenditures? Did gambling make you careless of the welfare of yourself or your family? Did you ever gamble longer than you had planned? Have you ever gambled to escape worry or trouble? Have you ever committed or considered committing an illegal act to finance gambling? Did gambling cause you to have difficulty in sleeping? Did arguments, disappointments, or frustrations create within you an urge to gamble? Did you ever have an urge to celebrate any good fortune by a few hours of gambling? And finally, have you ever considered self-destruction or suicide as a result of your gambling?
Thanks. Yeah. You said earlier when you went to your first meeting, it didn't really stick. Why do you think that was? And what was it that, like, what were the things that did really help you? And
that first meeting was in a typical TV meeting that you'd think of, cold church basement. But it was only 3 other people, 2 women, 1 man, and they were all 25 years older than me. I was 24. And I just didn't feel that like warm welcome. And so I went back the next week, but I just sat in the parking lot. I didn't go in. And then the next week I was like, I don't have gas money. I'm not going. And so then I just thought, well, I can do this on my own. I have willpower. I don't need to gamble. And so I tried for a while and it worked. You know, I didn't gamble for, I don't know, 6 months or something. But after 6 months of not gambling, you kind of have a bankroll built up again. One day, it just, the thought gets in your mind and it's just so insidious. You're like, I'll just go. I can be calm this time. I will just take my $400. I won't do anything more than that. But as soon as I'm there and I lose that 400, I'm right back to going to the bank account again. It was a nasty cycle. I used to over withdraw my bank account on purpose because I could. So I'd be negative $600 the next day in the bank account. I will have maxed out my credit cards, taken advances, and then I got into payday loans, which is a nasty cycle to get into, where you get that advance on your paycheck, but you pay a fee. And so you're always playing from behind. And so that's how I accumulated my debt, was just that built up. And then I went back to GA. I was 26. So a year and a half later, after my first meeting, I was in the casino gambling. I just felt sick. I was like, what am I doing? This isn't good. And so that following Monday, I went back to my GA meeting. Not that one. I went to a different town. And it was great. It was 30 people in there, still all older than me. I mean, I was 26. The next youngest was 35. And after that, everybody's 40s, 50s, 60s. And it helped. Like, they were, like, their stories, the wisdom that they had, just nice people kind of welcoming you in. And that was good for 2.5 years. I went to my meeting every Monday night. And I went to a few other meetings, but every Monday night, that was my meeting. And then about 2.5 years in, one day I was like, I'm tired. I don't feel like going tonight. And then the following week came and I was like, that was nice having Monday night off. I'm going to do that again. And I just sort of got what they say complacent in my recovery, where I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. But I wasn't, because again, like, within 6 months, I was back to gambling, thinking I can control it this time. I can do it. And I couldn't. And, my debt got worse. What happens to a lot of people who go to Gamblers Anonymous and have a relapse is they feel shameful. They don't want to show up to that group again and be like, oh, I relapsed. So that's what I did. I didn't go back. And instead, I thought, I need 2 things to gamble. I need time and money. So what if I just eliminate the time? So I got 3 jobs. It was 91 hours a week, like, just every day. Wake up, work, go to bed. That was what I did every day, except for Sunday nights. There was a block of time after my weekend job. And so one Sunday night, a bunch of us from that job went to the bar. I never really had trouble with alcohol, but I did do stupid things on alcohol, and this is one of those stupid things. Went to the bar. At the time, I had a Mustang stick shift, and it was awesome. I loved driving that thing. But it didn't handle well in the snow of Michigan in the winter, and it was February, so I'd borrowed my grandmother's Buick, and she hadn't driven it in 5 years. And so I left the bar, and I was going 70 in the left lane, and all of a sudden the car just kicks sideways, flips over. I'm getting dirt in my face. Still like, what the hell just happened? What's going on? And then I kind of wake up, and I'm outside, and the moon is out, bright moon, cold February night, like 11:30 at night. And then heard sirens coming. I didn't know where my car was because it was flipped over. You couldn't see the reflectors. Then I saw it. I stood up because the sirens, I could hear them coming, and my shoes were gone. My feet were freezing. My shoes were gone. They'd come off in the accident. And they were going to take me to jail, but they took me to the hospital because I got thrown out of the car. I don't know how I got out. So they sent me to the hospital. And my 28-year-old self had to call my parents at 3 a.m. and say, yeah, I just flipped over grandma's car. I was under the influence, and I'm probably going to get in trouble. So to my dad's credit, he was very nice. He didn't give me any crap. He just came to the hospital and picked me up, and we went and looked at the car, and it was smashed pretty good. Have no idea how I got out of there. but the back left wheel axle had broken because no one had driven that car in 5 years. And this is why they tell, even if you think like, oh, I can drink and drive, I'm fine, I'm a good driver. The car broke it. So even though I thought I was driving straight, because of the alcohol use, I got in trouble. And my dad said at the time, sort of like the reset of when I wanted to go to college and I took my grandfather's money. I was like, all right, time for a hard reset. And he's like, why don't you move back in with your mom and I? So at 29, I moved back in with my parents. And again, that made me very depressed. I wasn't a pleasant person to be around. But my dad's like, quit 3 jobs, just work 2 jobs, save your money, stay with us. You don't pay rent. And then, get on with your life, like get going. And so I did that. I went back to GA and they welcomed me back. And they're like, where you been? Did you have a relapse? And I was like, yeah. And I said, welcome back, because that's what they do. And I had another 2.5 years of good recovery, no gambling, just worked my 2 jobs, paid back a bunch of debt. And then, unfortunately, one Monday morning, I was at work and my mom texted me and she said, come to the hospital. And I went to the hospital and I walked in and they were doing CPR on my dad and he died right in front of me. And so that, I'm sure people listening and you guys have dealt with grief. Grief is not friendly. Makes you want to feel good. And the thing I did to feel good was gamble. So I knew that I wanted to gamble just because he had died. And so the day he died, I went to my GA meeting because I knew that it would be bad if I didn't. And they were all very nice. And I had a nice cry at my meeting and everything was good. And I didn't gamble. But within a few months, I started what became a year-long relapse and got into more financial trouble than I ever had before. And in that time frame, I moved to Los Angeles from Michigan because my mom was like, you always wanted to live in California. It's sad here. You're stuck in this gambling cycle. Just go. So I worked a bunch of overtime, saved up money, cashed in my 401k, which wasn't a lot. It was like $4,000, and moved to California, packed up all my belongings in a Ford Focus, got rid of the Mustang, was in a Ford Focus, and drove across the country, made it to Arizona, and passed a casino and gambled at the casino in Arizona. And then I thought, well, since I did that, I might as well go to Vegas on my way to Los Angeles. So I did that. I lost like 30% of the money I went with on my way there. Got there, went to a GA meeting in LA. They were a little different. It was a little strange being in a different room. But I went to like 8 of them. I wrote a book when I was in Los Angeles because I was like, I'm in Los Angeles. I should do something. Because I was a theater kid. So I had interest in like, when I got kicked out of college earlier in my story, I started taking like improv classes. So I took 3 years of improv classes. I did stand-up comedy. So this is all stuff I wanted to do, but the addiction took me away from it. Like instead of writing jokes, I was going to the casino. And then I moved to LA and I was like, well, what can I do while I'm just sitting here? And so I wrote a book about what I thought were my funny stories, but also a lot about my gambling addiction. And to celebrate me releasing that book, not that no one paid me to release it. Like it was self-published. Anyone can do it. But to celebrate releasing that book about my gambling addiction, I drove to Las Vegas and gambled. So I was just relentless in my gambling. And I did that about 8 times while I lived in Los Angeles until July 23rd, 2014. I lost everything. I mean, everything. Everything was gone. I was down to 0 plus negative 100,000 and on top of the years of losses. And so the first thing I did, I walked out of the casino at 7 a.m. and I called Chris, the guy who was the first one to tell me, like, you have a problem. And I said, I did it again. And he was, to his credit, he tried to help me. He was looking up like debt consolidation in the morning. When you get into the gambling addiction, you try to solve this problem in 5 minutes, but you can't. It takes time. It takes healing. But I stopped. I had to file bankruptcy at the end of my gambling addiction, which was a struggle because GA says don't file bankruptcy. It's a bailout. And I understand that. But also, I can't go back to working 3-4 jobs for the rest of my life to pay this debt off. And so I used bankruptcy as the tool it's meant for. And my lawyer said, you can't gamble while you're going through this. And so that is what made me stop. I was like, oh, I don't want to break rules and I don't want to lose this bankruptcy. So July 23rd, 2014 was my last bet. And it was at the Bellagio in Las Vegas.
Wow. Your story is taking me through such a roller coaster. It's just, when you were telling it, it was just like, I think now is the time when he was going to be, clean. And then it just, something always happens. And you've had to kind of restart over and over again. But you finally found something where it's just on the right track. I guess it was that basically your version of that was your final rock bottom, was that moment where after you filed bankruptcy in combination with the meetings that just kind of stuck?
Bankruptcy was a red line I thought I'd never cross. I never thought I would gamble enough money to need to file bankruptcy. Like if I had lost 20 grand, I could have paid that back. But I charged off 75 grand and I still have $35,000 in student loan debt, which is all gambling debt. I used my student loan money for gambling debt or for gambling. And so I still have that. You can't charge that off. So I'm still paying that. But that was the red line, was the bankruptcy. I was like, I can't believe it got this far. Like that made me wake up. The fog kind of lifted and I was like, what have I done to my life in 14 years? Jesus. So I stayed inside. I worked my job and I went right home every day. And I just watched Netflix because I thought if I get in my car, I'm going to try to drive to Vegas. So I just went home and I sat inside for 6 months. And that's how I kind of detoxed from the gambling. And then in 2015, I called Chris and I said, hey, man, I don't have money for therapy. Would you talk to me about my gambling addiction on a podcast? And so he did. And that's how I started the podcast. And that has been my recovery tool. I mean, that's what keeps me from gambling, is talking about my gambling constantly, sharing stories and interviewing other people who have addictions. And we get to talk about, vacuuming under the feet and having a giggle. But it sucks. It sucks because it's not the money. Like, whatever. You can make more money and get a job. I can live right now, but it's all that time that I wasted. It's those dreams I had of comedy and stuff when I was younger that I just threw away for gambling. And I wish I hadn't done that, but I'm glad I don't do it anymore because my life is much better for it.
Quick question. When your lawyer said the thing about when you file bankruptcy, he urged you definitely can't gamble. What happens if you gamble after that?
I talked to somebody since then who had some information and she was like, I don't think that's a rule. I don't think that's a law. And I said, I don't care. I'm glad he told me that. He said, if we're going to file bankruptcy, we have to stretch it because you can't have any gambling on your record in a year that you're gambling for, to file bankruptcy. So he sort of stretched it out for that purpose. And so that's why he said you can't gamble. I'm glad he said it. Had he not said that, I don't know that I wouldn't have found my way back.
And maybe it's just more of an optics thing too for the judge and all that stuff.
That's a good point.
For people who are kind of just starting their process in recovery, and let's say they realize they have a problem and they 86 themselves from the casino, there's still so many other avenues to gamble. How do you get that person to continue on even though they did the self-exclusion? How do you block out the rest of the avenues?
There's no one size fits all. Some states you can self-exclude from these casinos, but it won't self-exclude you from the others because they're tribal. And so it's a separate self-exclusion. And then the online gambling is a separate self-exclusion. But then, like you said, after all of that, there's still the offshores. There's the flips and the stakes that you can gamble on. There's sweepstakes and gray market crap. There's driving over the state line to get to another state. I love gambling. I don't blame anyone for doing it. Like, it's appealing as hell. But I hate what the industry is doing. I mean, you guys see all the commercials. They're everywhere. Like, everything is gambling. I've seen a bunch of YouTubers now who had nothing to do with gambling talking about the fact that everything is gambling. So everybody's aware now that everything is gambling. I mean, they're just always going to keep pushing it. I'm all for gambling. I just don't think we should have 24/7 access on our phones to gambling because it is addictive. Gambling is cake. We were meant to eat a piece of cake. We were meant to fly to Vegas and have a fun weekend. We were meant to go to Atlantic City, even though that city's a shithole. We were meant to go to Atlantic City.
So true.
And have a fun weekend. We weren't meant to, fun isn't supposed to be had 24/7. That is excess. And it's too much too fast without any forethought of the harm. And all these states that legalized online gambling just saw the dollar signs. They didn't see the harm. And, I work the helpline where I live, and we get calls all the time from parents of adult children. So the 24-year-old isn't calling. The 55-year-old mom is calling and saying, my son has a gambling addiction. And it's crazy now. I mean, we get calls about, and I ran into this too. I don't know if you guys are any sports card collecting in your diet, but sports card collecting has turned into straight gambling at this point.
Yeah.
It's all lotto tickets and breaking. And
yeah, the breaking of the box and how much they're spending on these things. It is. It's gambling.
And so, like you said, you can self-exclude from the casino, but you have the offshore stuff. You have these other gambling-like behaviors, like day trading on Robinhood or crypto, or sports cards, or even Pokemon cards. I mean, the endless possibilities of gambling are everywhere now. And so, I'm not here to convince anybody they have an addiction, but just to say like, hey man, there's help, there's people out there. And by sharing the story, people go, oh, I also lifted my feet for the vacuum. Maybe I should talk to somebody. It's hard to reach out for help. It's really hard. And so just want to make it easier.
Really good segue. So we are in casinos constantly, and we constantly talk about, one, how depressing they are. We see behind the curtain. We know what the Wizard of Oz really looks like because we're treated like royalty, high rollers, etc. And as soon as they figure out that we are winners, then everything gets revealed, and how we're treated is basically like a common criminal. But we also see, you're not going to love this, but what we call gamblers in a casino, which is a ploppy. They plop down and hand over their money. So we see that what drives the engine, and that it might be the most depressing thing in a casino, is right next to me seeing somebody with a serious problem not be helped, be pushed to gamble more. And, you bring up the hotlines, and it's awesome that you work that. But from my point of view, I see two things: pamphlets with a helpline, and then this messaging that just says responsible gaming. Not gambling. They like to use the word gaming instead of gambling to desensitize you to it. And essentially the messaging there is have a limit. So it's basically okay every day to come in and lose that money. It's just have a limit to how much you lose every single day, which seems asinine to me. So in saying all that, you kind of bridged this and talked about how it's everywhere, but talk about your experience, what you experienced the casinos doing to help facilitate you, and what is wrong with the current environment, because you're not anti-gambling.
No, I'm anti-industry. I don't think they have a good head on their shoulders.
Yeah. Talk about that more, like what you literally experienced, what they do to you, how they keep you gambling, the free play, or all that stuff.
You are speaking my language, SD1. I hate the term responsible gambling. And you can't even get the industry to say gambling, like you said.
Gaming.
Because they want to make it sound fun. And it is. Like, all the commercials for casinos are all people in fancy outfits having a great time. And never have I been in a casino and seen that. I see people chain smoking, and I see people pissed off as hell. Maybe at the craps table and some blackjack tables when the table's doing well, there's some high fives and there's some fun, but never like on the commercials. I think players' cards are the first thing that, it just keeps people going back. I got an email from a guy through the podcast, and he said, hey, I'm homeless and I'm living outside the casino because they have free play. So I called him. I shouldn't have done it. That was a big mistake because he called me for like 2 weeks straight. But I called him and I talked to him, and he said, yeah, I'm living outside the casino because I have my free play card and they put $40 on it every morning at 9:30. And so I'm there for the free play. And then hopefully I win and I can go eat and stuff. And I was like, the free play is keeping people thinking, well, I'm just using somebody else's dollar. Gamblers will be like, oh, I'm a VIP. I get free rooms. I'm like, you paid for those rooms several times over. And so I think the players' cards and stuff aren't helpful. DraftKings and FanDuel sort of started the bet 5, win 250, which just isn't accurate. You have to play through so many times to actually get that amount of money. And so there's a lot of dishonesty in the advertising surrounding gambling. Like I said, I hate responsible gambling because it puts the onus on the gambler. Like, well, if you have a problem, if you have an addiction, that's on you. We told you to set a budget. It's like, well, this is an addictive product. It's not like you gave me, an 8-ball of Coke and said, know when to say when. Like, no, you gave me the 8-ball. I'm going to do the whole thing. It's just 24/7 access is too much. And the advertising is dishonest. And there's just too many ways to be cashless now, where there's no room for thought. I had to walk across the casino floor, go to the ATM, think about what I was doing, notice my ATM probably doesn't have a lot of money in it, and still take out the money. But I had time to think about it. There's no time now on the online apps. You're just pressing a plus button and the amount you want to put in. And it's 2 seconds to add more money to your account. And so there's no real money in your hand, so nobody thinks of it as money. They just think of it as a video game, and they're just throwing it in and losing more. The casino, the whole industry says, we care, we do responsible gambling. They don't do anything. And they tell you to set a budget on time and money. I mean, to me, that's like telling someone to breathe. Like, that's common sense. No one's going into the casino willy-nilly, like, oh, I got millions of dollars to just waste. No, they're going in like, I brought my 500, and if I lose that, I'll go home. Everyone does that anyway. No one needs to be told to set a budget by the casino. I mean, it's like the whole drink responsibility thing, you know?
Yeah.
Don't have too many. Well, okay, but by the third one, the lady next to me looks pretty pretty. I'd like to have a fourth one. Same in the casino. It bugs me. Like, if they would just say, hey, this can be addictive. Here's where you get help. Welcome to the casino. That's all you need. Just a sign on the outside that says, be careful. But they don't do that because they don't want to admit that it's addictive. But it is. There's plenty of evidence that gambling is addictive. And it just bugs the shit out of me that they will say, like, we do responsible gambling. Like, you're not doing anything. You have a list of things to do on your website, but no one's reading that before they gamble. Gambling's a fun activity. People just go in and play. There's something in like Massachusetts and in Nova Scotia called Game Sense. And Game Sense will teach you how to play the games. So you don't go in and just not know what you're doing and lose all your money. But again, people, when they walk into a casino, it's like, well, I want to play. I don't want to learn. I'm not here to do schoolwork. I'm here to have fun. I'm here to have a few drinks, have some laughs, and gamble. And I think that's great. Like, you go 2 times, 3 times a month or whatever, have a fun time at the casino, and you got the money to lose, do it. But when you start not paying bills, that's a pretty big sign. When you start disappearing into your phone, and I mean, we all disappear into our phones for different reasons now, but this is a very true thing. It's not even hyperbole, but I know many gamblers who were on the toilet gambling or at red lights gambling. Like, it's just all the time now. It's just what people do. So I wish they would do more to say that this is an addictive product like tobacco.
That's exactly what I tend to say. I want the casinos regulated like tobacco and alcohol have been regulated, you know, forcefully. And I'm not necessarily pro-regulation, but in terms of like, casinos always like to say we're the most regulated industry. Well, that's true on the banking side. They're highly regulated with the money that comes in and out. And in terms of regulation for their customer base or society, they pretty much can do whatever the hell they want, whenever the hell they want to do it. And like, I always push back on this notion. So you brought up some big red flags, like can't pay bills, etc. My whole thing is I think the numbers of, quote, addicted gamblers is kind of garbage, and we don't truly capture the amount of people that are in a casino that have a problem, but are still paying their bills just fine, because I see them in the same casinos every single day, gambling away. And what you said earlier about the casinos make most of their money off a very small percentage. If we could magically just yank all of the problem gamblers out of a casino and let the casinos thrive on what they show in the commercials, the person that gambles once or twice a month, 6 times a year for a good night out, they would all collapse. They wouldn't exist anymore. And that's the reality of the situation, which is why, like, the pro-regulation angle, or you, like, I love that you're just like, just have a warning like that's on a cigarette pack, like, be careful, this is dangerous, this is gambling, that is what it is, you are supposed to lose. That's the whole idea of this. They don't build these big giant casinos off winning players. They throw us out.
Yeah. Have you guys been tossed?
Oh, yeah.
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. Outside of casinos, why do you think gambling addiction is just not talked about as much in regular society like alcoholism or drug addiction?
Yeah, GA's been around since 57, so it's existed, but gambling is just so normalized in America. I mean, I played cards with my parents for money. Like, they sold me those things when I was 12, those pull tabs when I was 12. People gift kids lotto tickets all the time at Christmas time. You know, everybody plays Super Bowl squares. Everybody does a March Madness bracket. And those things like Super Bowl, March Madness, I don't worry about those. People in my field tend to, but it's like, well, that's where everyone gambles. I'm worried about the guy who's there at 3 a.m. doing it or on his phone. Gambling is just so normalized in our culture. I started the podcast way before online gambling got legalized in America. And so I interviewed a ton of guys and people from the UK and Australia. I mean, they have huge markets for sports betting and online gambling way before we ever did. And you could just see, like, don't do what they did, but then we did exactly what they did. And it's like, well, nobody really cares. You get to be an adult and you realize nobody knows what they're doing. I thought when I was a kid, I was like, well, these adults know what they're doing, right? And then you get to be an adult and you're like, oh, nobody has any idea. Like, everyone's just kind of making it up as we go. Nobody's looking to be the person of common sense who says this might not be great for society. And again, like, we should have gambling. I don't think we should have it how we have it now in all these states and just keep legalizing 24/7 access on your phone. But we should have pockets of casinos that people can go to and have a good time. But now they've turned casinos into theme parks. I mean, I had a client when I worked in treatment. He didn't want to self-exclude because Michael Jordan's restaurant was in the casino here in Connecticut. And he's like, the bacon's so good. I'm like, you're losing all your money. But he's like, but the bacon. And what he was really saying was, I'm not ready to stop.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying to you, I want to go to the restaurant. But what I'm really saying is, I want that window open that I can still gamble if I feel. And I went through that several times. So I understood it, but it doesn't end well. And I honestly don't think once somebody has a compulsion to gamble and gets out of control on a constant basis, I don't think there's any going back to a controlled state. I think it's, abstinence is the best way to go. I did work in treatment, so I learned about harm reduction and the benefits of that. But I would still say abstinence is the best way to go if you find out you have an addiction, because the brain doesn't heal itself unless you stop the act that it keeps doing. Gambling wasn't in the diagnostic, the DSM-5.
DSM-5 and 4, yeah.
That's when gambling was put in there as a behavioral addiction that was looked at as an addiction. And they've done studies where gambling lights up the same part of the brain as cocaine. So it doesn't matter if there's a substance involved, it's still addictive. And it takes time to heal that part of the brain. And you need weeks and weeks to heal the brain to get out of that cycle.
Have you ever looked into what the slot manufacturers actually do, speaking about that dopamine hit and what lights up in the brain?
The Addiction by Design book?
Yeah, they have psychologists that specialize in this that work at the manufacturers.
IGN?
Yeah. And things like near wins light up your brain stronger than an actual win. Hence why if you need 3 coins, you're constantly getting 2 coins. That is a stronger response to the brain. And the keynotes that the machine uses and the different lights, it's almost like it's designed to hook you and make you hit the button. Oh, because it is.
Yeah. In that same vein, I'm surprised that people are so trusting of online gambling. You would think that the computer is rigged against you, but nobody cared. They just hop on, throwing their money. I understand sports betting. Sports betting, much more understandable to me. There's a game on tonight, I'm going to put $20 on it. And that's what a lot of people do, and that's fine. The sports betting community has like a quarterly conference, SBC, that they do. And it's a huge trade show, and they have speakers. And so I went a couple years in a row. And one year I was on a panel, I'm the lone guy in the room being like, hey, responsible gambling sucks. You guys should do something better. And then the trade show is insane because 60-70% of those booths are there to say, like, how do we get people to gamble more often and faster? How do we get people from the sports betting to the online casino? Because the online casino is where their bread is buttered. The sports betting, like Vegas, they do it so they're not losing too much, they're not winning too much, but they get that little bit on top. And it's the online casino where they're making all their money. And that's the most addictive part to me. I mean, even as fast as you can bet on sports these days with all the in-game bets, it's still not as fast as online blackjack or online slots.
Yeah, and grandma can sit at her table. And I literally say grandma because casinos have historically focused and targeted the elderly. I mean,
they bust them in.
Yeah, they bust them in.
That's mind-blowing.
Right when they get their checks, too. They bust them to the casino. Like, how is that allowed?
From the retirement center to the casino.
And now they can do it on their kitchen table.
It's an unfair fight. But all our lawmakers, Republicans and Democrats alike, all said yay. I have equal hatred because of that.
Well, I think, so the government, in my view, I'm kind of bad about this. I don't think the government cares about the people, just like I don't think corporations care about their people. They care about the money flow, and they get money, so they state sanction casinos because they want the tax revenue. They don't care about the consequences of it. So they do that, and boom, and they help promote them and all those things. And it's not good. It's not good. We have yet to see the ramifications of sports betting. And to your point, the cross marketing from sports betting to the online casinos that occurs. It's everywhere, man. Every college kid is sports betting.
And they all have group chats where they share their bets, screenshots of their bets and stuff.
Yeah, and you have entire industries and people making money off of selling picks, which they're not real. They're touts. This is what we call them. And they're all lies. They don't know what they're doing.
Do you remember the Las Vegas Knights, their first partnership in gambling is with a tout service? And it quickly got, everyone crapped on it. And so they stopped that. But it's like, what are you doing? Colorado University partnered with a sports book, a few other colleges. It's just everybody was like money with no thought of any consequences.
At what point do you think they're going to realize that this is a huge problem and do something about it? Or do you think that's not going to happen? Have you seen any increase in help programs?
Alcohol and substance use are funded from a federal level, hundreds of millions of dollars. So those go out to all these different institutions. You can apply for grants to get that money. Gambling addiction has $0 in federal funding. So any help that's coming is either through insurance or state money or money from the industry. The entire gambling help ecosystem is funded by the industry. Like the industry in every state gives money to the state or gives money to these nonprofits that help people. If you're working in a field where you're trying to help people, but you can't be fully honest because the people who pay your bills are the ones causing the problem, it's a bit of an issue. It's like they're just dangling the dollar. You can't say what you really feel about the industry in these environments. There is a bill that the National Council on Problem Gambling and Senator Blumenthal here in Connecticut introduced called the GRID Act. There's an excise tax on federal handle from sports betting. The federal excise tax is 0.25%. It would take half of that and feed it over so there would be federal funding directly for gambling addiction assistance. But, I don't know how politics works and getting bills passed, but that bill has just been introduced again a second time for this new Congress. But no one, who knows if there'll ever be a floor vote or a committee vote or any vote or if it will ever pass. So early stages, people are paying attention now. And like I said earlier, random YouTubers are doing videos now on gambling addiction. So I think more people are aware. I guess that's the one good thing about all this extra gambling. But I don't see it coming to a head until enough people raise their voice and say, like, stop screwing us. Like, we can't handle this. There's so many addictive. Between social media and gambling and drugs and there's just everything seems like it's kind of designed to keep us sedated with a good time and not realizing, like there's a whole world of fun out there that we're not having because we're addicted to everything. And gambling is just one of those everythings. But gambling is the one that hits your wallet. If I drink, I'm going to pass out eventually if I drink enough. If I do enough drugs, I'm going to pass out or overdose, heaven forbid. But gambling, you can keep doing until your bank account's empty and no one is going to cut you off. That's the bad part. In a bar, if you drink to excess, they're going to cut you off. They're going to say, get out, you're acting a fool. But in a casino, they're not going to do that. So it's not looked at the same. Bars have an end time, 2 a.m. in most places. Casinos are open 24/7. And so I just wish they would equate the two and make it fair. Anyone sitting in a casino at 4 a.m. is clearly addicted to gambling. And then you get people who will make what if they have a second shift job? I'm like, okay, fine. That's one or two people. We're not talking about everybody. Most people at a casino at 3 a.m. aren't there having the good time that's on TV. They're there because they're addicted to the product.
Yeah. It's the same playbook that the tobacco companies used to do. They funded the studies that said smoking is not bad. Oh, it's not that bad. Oh, it doesn't really do as much harm as, that was all funded by them. And it's the exact same thing the gambling world is able to do right now.
I have a Shell station around the corner that I go to every morning to grab a coffee, and there's a lotto counter. So I pay attention to those guys at the lotto counter. But they have a sign above the cigarettes that said, cigarettes may cause cancer. Like, it's a stern warning. And I look over at gambling, and it's like, responsible gambling. Don't go over your limit. So it is looked at very differently, but it takes a long time, unfortunately. But a lot of people are going to be harmed in that time. And here's the number one stat that I think is most important with gambling addiction. It has the highest rate of suicidality than any other addiction. 1 in 5 people with a gambling addiction will attempt suicide.
Wow.
And so that stat to me says everything you need to know about gambling. We just had an impact study in Connecticut, and it was like 70% of the revenue is coming from 5% of the gamblers. So that right there shows you that there's addiction.
Yeah, I'm glad you just mentioned that stat because I was just thinking a second ago why the alcohol and tobacco, why all that is different than the gambling is I think it's because of with substance abuse and alcoholism, you have deaths and you have insurance companies and there's lawyers fighting over, overdoses and things that happen and cancer and suing the company to get money because of the cancer. But no one equates that there is death also with the gambling, which is what you just said, the suicides. It's like they're not linking that yet. So as soon as you can link the deaths with the gambling, that's, I feel like, the only chance we're going to have real, change in the laws. Because right now, I didn't even realize, I had no idea before you said that it was that high. And I was just thinking, yeah, sure, gambling addiction is horrible and you lose your money, you lose your family's money, but there's no death associated with it.
Yeah, there is. UK started tracking. It's like 1.5 per day. I think the worst part about gambling addiction, generally it's the spouse who all of a sudden the husband or the wife, says, oh, I have a gambling addiction. By the way, our retirement's gone, or I haven't paid our mortgage in 3 months. Because a lot of relationships, people, half the relationship doesn't look at the bills being paid. And all of a sudden it's surprise, we have no money, I have an addiction, and you're screwed. And there's no coming back from that. You can't get the money back. I had a helpline call a few months ago. 21-year-old kid lost $2,500. And he called me earnestly and he said, can I get that back? And I was like, oh, buddy, no, that's not how this works. No, it's gambling. You lost it. It's not coming back. And so he was panicked and caused a lot of panic. And then people don't even see the back end, like the taxes. If you win high enough where you got to pay taxes, win-loss reports. I mean, I saw a lady this morning who was like, I am freaked out about my taxes because of my gambling. There's so many aspects. And I just wish they had put forethought in. I just wish they would make it fair. Just say it's addictive, you can lose your money, and then it's up to the individual. I believe in freedom of, people's choice. They can go out and do what they want to do. But I also think, like, if you're going to legalize gambling the way they did, then legalize heroin, coke, everything. Just do it. Because this is what you've done with gambling. That's what it is. It gives you that high. And man, when you were talking about the near losses and how much that, or the near wins and how much that, every single time I'd press that button on a slot machine, your heart jumps out of your body, especially when it hits that bonus. And bonus is always a 3-tier, like bump, bump, bump. And you get those first 2 bumps, and that third one, you're like, here it goes. And it would just, like, my heart couldn't take it. It was so exciting to have that. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you guys are more disciplined where you don't react as big in blackjack. But I would imagine that when you get an ace first card or something, it's like, oh, here we go. I don't know. It's so exciting. And then on top of it, it's money. Like, we all want money. Everything now seems to be a quick buck. And you got to work for your money. And now that I work for my money, I don't want to give it away to anybody.
Yeah. I think with us, it kind of shifts. So when I see that ace, my brain is like, the dealer's definitely going to have blackjack. This is going to be a push.
Oh.
Or I'm going to have to buy insurance because I'm supposed to. Yeah. I'm dead.
Most of us get really pessimistic. I will say one, like, card count, if you end up, learning card counting, it definitely, for me, it takes the fun out of gambling. Like, I thought it was going to turn into this thing where it was going to be even more fun than when I was a gambler, but it totally sucks that thrill rush out of gambling. So yeah, it's different than what I expected. But where should people go, like, if they are questioning if they need help or want help?
The easiest thing to say is to call 1-800-GAMBLER, because they'll be able to find what resources. It's different state to state. It sucks because this is all state regulated. So the easiest thing to do is call 1-800-GAMBLER. When I started, there were no gambling addiction podcasts, and now there's probably 20, but there's probably honestly like 3 or 4 that keep putting out content. And they always have access to resources. Jeff, who I do the podcast with a lot, he runs a group that's wide open. It's worldwide, open to everybody. And the nice thing about his group is it's not GA specific. It's just a gambling recovery group that meets on Zoom, and it's worldwide. And it's really great for anybody who just wants to be in a group atmosphere.
What's that called?
We could give out the email. So all you got to do is email Jeff at join us, JOINUS, at DCGP, as in Delaware Council on Gambling Problems.org. So join us at DCGP.org. And you just say, hi, Jeff, I'm interested in the group. And I'm a member of that group. It's a great group. It meets 7 days a week on Zoom and does that. So that way, you can probably make 1 or 2 meetings a week. And it's nice because there's a WhatsApp chat that comes with it. So you can, if somebody's having an urge to gamble or a craving, they can put in the chat, be like, guys, what do I do? And everyone's very nice and responds. And I mean, the nice thing about recovery is everyone's usually a pretty good person because they realize the folly of their ways and, have kind of shed all the crap about themselves and are just real. So it's a great. I think the best way to recover is in a group of people because I think it's so helpful. Recovering alone is so hard because it's so easy to just make a turn and start going back to your addiction.
Yeah. And I think also that's so awesome that you guys have the WhatsApp feature for all those times when you're not physically, because some people, they go to the meeting and it's like, oh, I feel so great during this meeting. And then they have the other 23 hours of the day that's just kind of really, really hard.
Yeah.
But I think also maybe if you go to a meeting, kind of like what you did, don't just give up on the group. Like maybe go to it a few times. And if you're not clicking with that group, try a different meeting at a different time, a different place, and just try to find the one that fits you the most. Because I went through that same thing too when I was I had a drug addiction when I was in high school, and I would go to these meetings, and I went to the youth meetings first, but it just seemed like that group wasn't taking it as serious as I was taking it, and then I went to like 4 or 5, eventually found a group I really liked. So I would strongly suggest like shopping around.
When you were going through that, did you have the thought that I had when I was 18 of like, I'm too young to have an addiction? Or did you realize?
I realized pretty quick because of my reactions from my friends when they would see my emotional ups and downs to when someone was going to like, was supposed to bring me something at school that day or something, and then they flaked out, and how devastated and sad I would be that they flaked out on supplying me.
Yeah.
And just the look on their face of being like, oh, wow, you're not right. And that was like, okay, yeah, something's happening here. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting because it contrasts with what my friends had no idea. I mean, they had an idea. They knew I was gambling all the time. But again, because it was the behavioral addiction, they were like, oh, that's Brian. He gambles. Had it been heroin or something instead, or Vicodin, they would have been like, oh, buddy, you need help. But they didn't because it wasn't that. It is just looked at differently.
Yeah, it's characterized. It's not seen the same way. It's like, yeah, that's the gambling guy. Like, he's just a cool, like, he's just having fun,
Yeah. Well, I mean, it didn't help that when I did win, I would do the fanning with the money. And
that's what I was going to say. Yeah. Oftentimes gamblers only talk about their wins.
Yeah.
As a professional gambler and what we do, we track everything. The number one question, if somebody is gambling, I say, well, do you track your wins and losses? And if the answer is no, then you almost 100% know that they're just a gambler or they have a problem because they don't know if they're up or down. Nobody goes and says, what's my current win-loss right now? Nobody wants to look at that. They just want to remember the good times.
I kept track my first year, and then it's like, I don't want to know this. So I have no idea lifetime. I just know what I filed for bankruptcy. And so there's a guy, this is just to give an example of poker. Everyone says poker is a skill-based game, and it is. But there's a guy in my recovery group who's also been on the podcast, and his name's Greg. And Greg was a professional poker player. And at one point, Greg took a $400,000 pot. But Greg also lost that $400,000 pot because he couldn't stop gambling. He couldn't stop playing poker. And he's in the same recovery room I am, even though he played poker and he took that big pot, but he's sitting right next to me in recovery, And then this other one is about, in my early GA days, a lady in my group. She passed on since, which is how I found out the story. She was chairing the meeting when I entered GA. It was very sweet, very nice, probably like 70 years old. And I didn't know her story. And then, she had passed away and someone told me her story. And it was, she had gotten in with some loan sharks because of her gambling. And they were threatening to harm her kid who, whatever, he's like 40 or something. And she was worried about her family. So in order to get the money to pay them, she threw on a ski mask and got a gun and went into a convenience store and attempted to rob. This lady in her 60s is robbing a convenience store for her gambling addiction. and got caught and served time and now is in the meeting with me. And so you really never know. The social casinos that are on Apple and all the Play stores and stuff, those, I mean, are so addictive. There's a nun in California who she embezzled $400,000 from her church to play a social casino that you can't win any money. You're just buying coins to play the slots and to play blackjack, and you can't win, but she still spent 400 grand. It's just a very addictive product. It just makes you feel good. Like any game makes you feel good to play, but games used to be $60 and you play it once and you're done, but now they're just ongoing. A lot of games have gambling elements to them with loot boxes and all that. So kids are getting groomed much earlier to gamble. And because of these offshore websites are sweepstakes websites like Stake and Fliff, they don't shut them down as gambling websites. The access to them is still open just because of a silly clause. By the way, I loved the Kendrick Lamar the other night because I like to see Drake embarrassed because Drake does ads for Stake. And so I always like to see him embarrassed. Made me so happy.
Yeah. Oh, well, I just want to add, our community right now might be asking, why are we doing a podcast on this? We're professionals.
Because you're good humans.
Well, it's not just that. I think that it's important. We have a propensity to get frustrated with the general population, even though, honestly, there's no other way to put it. Because there are gamblers out there, we make a living. If it were not for people that had problems in casinos, we couldn't do what we do, which is kind of gut-wrenching when you think about it, because a lot of us really do. It sucks to see. But then eventually you keep seeing the degenerates and the people with a problem, and you start calling them words like degenerates, and you start dehumanizing them. So I think you coming on, we appreciate this because it's important that we humanize these people. They are people, and they have problems. So that's the first thing. And the second thing I think is within our community, if you think because you are doing the right things now that you can't fall victim to the onslaught of psychological games or the things that the casinos are doing, that you can't slip and use that knowledge to then start gambling. Joe, you've seen it. I've seen it. People that are professionals that have definitely turned the page and become something very, very different than a professional. And unfortunately, it's just the world that we live in. So, to the community out there, this is an important topic. And Brian, I really appreciate you sharing your time and your experiences with us and sharing this side of everything and what it really does and, how you can get help, because it's important.
Well, thank you, SD1. I appreciate you saying that. And thank you so much for having me on. I love doing this. I can kind of do it in a fun way because I'm happy to make fun of myself. And I realize gambling addiction is in a way a bit silly. People just always think, well, just stop. Why would you throw away all your money? But you're just so addicted. And I thank you for saying about humanizing people. People with a gambling addiction are liars. They are selfish. They don't have any foresight. They just all around not great people when they're in the midst of their addiction. But I will defend them until my last day because, like you said, there's a human behind them. And I just think, we can all do better. And I wish the industry would do better, but I don't know if that day's coming anytime soon. But I love when people win, because I love to see that money get out of the casino's hands and into the hands of people. I do love to see that, yes, someone won and took a big, cash out. So that's great. I love when people win and walk away. I do love that. I do miss, when I was 20, my lungs collapsed, spontaneous pneumothorax. And the doctor said, all right, you can never scuba dive because if your lungs collapse underwater while you're scuba diving, you'll die. And I was like, whoa, no one's ever told me I can't do something in my life. And then came gambling addiction. It was like, can't ever gamble again either. So now I've got two things I can't ever do, but I think there's enough other stuff out there that I can have a pretty good life without those two things. So I appreciate you guys having me on. This has been fun. You guys are great.
Thanks so much, Brian. Definitely check out his podcast. It's called the All In Podcast, available where all podcasts are available. And if you want to learn how to responsibly count cards takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of hours of practice. We don't want you getting into this if you're trying to get out of debt or for any of those kinds of reasons. Don't join our website, please.
Well, and that's what I like too. You guys did say that in the email. Like, we're not here to, if people have issues, we don't want them to come do this. So you guys are just very upfront and honest individual. Well,
not to the casinos, maybe, but
we hate the casinos. We call it doing the Lord's work, taking money from them. At least I do.
I'm with you. I love it. Keep doing what you're doing. As long as you don't get in too much trouble.
Brian, is there anything else that you want to pimp? You want to talk about anything else other than your podcast, books, organizations, anything like that?
There's plenty of lived experience out there sharing their stories. There's a couple of other good gambling addiction podcasts that I really like. One's called The Broke Girl Society, done by a woman named Christina Cook, and her focus is women in recovery for gambling addiction. And something I learned from her was that women feel safer going to a casino, versus a bar when you're going out alone. Like, a casino's a safe environment, so that's why women will go there and play slots. And I never thought that never dawned on me. So Christina's opened my eyes to a lot of women's struggles in recovery, and she does a great podcast and has a Facebook group. And then there's another gentleman who started his a few years after me, who's done a great job. His name's Jamie Salzberg, and he has one called the After Gambling Podcast. So you don't have to listen to mine, but if you need a gambling addiction podcast, you just Google it. There's several out there with good people doing good work. That's it. And my email's on my podcast. So if anybody listening does have an issue and wants to talk or needs some help, you can email me at leestreetpod@gmail.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. Take care, everyone.